The studio lights dimmed just enough to frame the tension. It was supposed to be a calm segment. Rachel Maddow had done this 1,000 times. But Jasmine Crockett wasn't here for softballs. She wasn't here to dance around hypocrisy. She was here to speak truth, and not even MSNBC's primetime queen was going to slow her down. Rachel opened the interview with a smile, poised and confident. "Congresswoman Crockett," she began, "some people say your approach is a bit much. Too bold, too direct. What do you say to that?" Jasmine didn't blink. "I say those people are used to women being quiet. And used to black women being invisible." The studio fell into a sharp silence. The smile on Rachel's face flickered. She tried to pivot, offering a chuckle to soften the edge. "But do you think your tone helps bring people together, or does it divide?" That was when Jasmine leaned in. "I think the truth divides people who've been lying too long, Rachel." Boom. The air left the room. Rachel tried to keep her cool, but the confidence cracked. And as she reached for her next line, Jasmine had already taken the reins. The camera zoomed in just slightly, and America leaned in. The interview had just started. But it was already nothing like Rachel expected. Rachel shifted in her seat, smoothing her notes like she was resetting the script. But this wasn't going to follow any script. Not tonight. "Okay," she said carefully. "Let's talk about unity. Some Democrats say confronting Republicans so directly might backfire. That we need more diplomacy." Jasmine cocked her head slightly. "Rachel, I didn't come here to play patty cake with people stripping rights away from Americans. I came here to say what needs to be said, on behalf of people who don't have the mic." The crowd behind the cameras, usually silent, murmured. Rachel, a veteran at maintaining control, went for her anchor move. "Well, let's take a step back. You've made headlines recently, calling out your own party too. You said, and I quote, 'being spineless isn't a strategy.'" Jasmine nodded. "I stand by that. You don't think that weakens your side?" Jasmine leaned forward, locking eyes. "I think weakness is pretending bipartisanship works when one party's burning the Constitution and the other's too afraid to say fire." That line hit like a siren. Rachel blinked, once, twice, then tried to smile, but the air had changed. Jasmine wasn't just answering questions. She was rewriting the entire interview in real time, and the audience could feel it. America wasn't watching a Q&A. They were watching a shift in the balance. Rachel leaned back slightly, eyes narrowing just enough to register control without confrontation. She was used to guests pushing boundaries, but Jasmine wasn't pushing. She was taking over. "Congresswoman," Rachel said, voice calm, measured, "some might say your tone adds fuel to an already divided country." Jasmine didn't blink. "My tone?" she echoed, leaning into the moment. "Rachel, I represent people who've had their lives legislated, their history whitewashed, and their rights auctioned off. If my tone makes people uncomfortable, they should ask why the truth stings." The control room, off-screen, scrambled. Producers were pinging each other. Viewers were flooding Twitter with clips already. Jasmine's words were becoming sound bites before the segment had even ended. Rachel tried to recalibrate. "But don't you worry that if everyone speaks like this, we lose room for compromise?" Jasmine's laugh was short and sharp. "You can't compromise with people who don't believe you have a right to exist on equal terms." Rachel glanced down at her notes, then abandoned them. "What do you think we should be doing?" Jasmine leaned forward, her voice low but electrified. "Calling it out, every time. No more half measures. No more acting like neutrality is noble when it's just cowardice with a press pass." Rachel froze. Just for a beat. The audience saw it. Jasmine had taken the gloves off, and the host of the Rachel Maddow show was officially on the defensive. The air in the studio changed. Not metaphorically, literally. The kind of silence that only arrives when a truth bomb detonates and no one is sure whether to applaud or brace for fallout. Rachel shifted in her chair. She was composed, but something in her demeanor cracked, just for a breath. "You're saying the media is complicit?" she asked, now less the host, more the defendant. "I'm saying the media built the stage and handed out the scripts," Jasmine shot back. "And every time you center both sides while one side's burning the house down, you're selling us fire insurance with no intention of paying the claim." Rachel blinked. She glanced off camera, likely to a producer. A cue? A bailout? But Jasmine wasn't done. "You know what happens when you sanitize corruption? It festers. And what we're living in now is the infection. From voter suppression to court stacking to billionaire bailouts, they didn't hide it. Y'all just didn't scream loud enough." Rachel opened her mouth, but nothing came out. And that's when the moment crystallized. On live television, one of the most respected voices in liberal media was speechless. Jasmine wasn't grandstanding. She wasn't performing. She was testifying. The kind of testimony that makes you sit up straight. The kind that dares you to look away, and dares you even more not to. And America? America was watching. Rachel finally leaned forward, elbows on the desk, hands folded like a student about to be schooled. "So what do we do, Congresswoman? If everything's broken, what's the fix?" Jasmine didn't flinch. "First, stop pretending the system broke itself. It was dismantled, by names and faces we all recognize. And too many of them are still being booked as guests instead of defendants." The camera cut to a tight close-up of Jasmine's face. Fire. Calm. Precision. All in one expression. "The fix isn't just policy, it's narrative. We change what people believe about power. Because right now, too many believe that power is about protection. But it should be about accountability." Rachel nodded slowly, but she was no longer leading this interview. Jasmine continued. "You want to fix this? Start by refusing to center the feelings of the powerful over the facts of the abused. Call it what it is. If someone's protecting Epstein's files, they're not defending innocence. They're defending complicity." That hit like a hammer. Social media exploded, clips already trending before the segment even ended. Hashtags like #Crockett cuts through and #Maddow moment flooded X and TikTok. Back in the studio, Jasmine leaned back for the first time. She wasn't gloating. She was letting the truth breathe. Rachel exhaled, almost involuntarily. "You just flipped the script." "No," Jasmine said. "I just read it out loud." And suddenly, it wasn't the Rachel Maddow show anymore. It was a reckoning. By the time they cut to commercial, MSNBC's control room was in chaos, not from technical issues, but from disbelief. Producers were whispering things like, "Did she just say complicity?" and "We're gonna get calls, good and bad." But Rachel Maddow wasn't blinking. She knew television. She knew history. And she knew when something irreversible had just happened. When they came back on air, she didn't waste time. "Welcome back. If you're just tuning in, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett just said what many have whispered. Out loud. On record. And she's still here." Jasmine gave a small nod, but her gaze didn't waver. Rachel leaned in again. "Let's go further. You mentioned Mar-a-Lago. Are you saying the silence around Epstein's files is strategic?" Jasmine folded her arms calmly. "Rachel, they didn't lose the files. They didn't forget the files. They're hiding them. Because what's in there doesn't just implicate strangers, it shatters proximity. It puts names on guest lists they've protected for years." A hush swept through the audience. Jasmine continued, voice low but sharp. "They want Americans afraid of immigrants, drag queens, and poor people, because if they ever focused on the rich predators at the top, this whole house of cards collapses." It wasn't anger. It was clarity. Rachel said nothing. The silence wasn't empty. It was heavy. Truth-filled. Then Jasmine added one final blow. Every second they delay justice, another survivor wonders if their pain even matters. And that is the real crime. Rachel finally spoke. Congresswoman. I think we just hit primetime truth. The screen didn't cut away. It couldn't. As the segment continued, social media exploded. #Crockett was right trended within minutes. Clips of her last words looped endlessly across TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube Shorts. People didn't just hear her, they felt her. Survivors messaged. Law students debated. Even former GOP staffers texted journalists, "She's not wrong." But inside the MSNBC studio, Jasmine wasn't watching screens. She was watching Rachel. Maddow, for the first time in years, looked unsettled. She straightened her papers, leaned back, and said, "You know what this means, right? What you've said tonight, it doesn't just ruffle feathers. It detonates systems." Jasmine didn't blink. Good. Systems that protect predators deserve to be blown apart. Rachel hesitated. "You understand the backlash will come fast and hard." Jasmine leaned forward. "Let it. I'm not here to be comfortable. I'm here to be consequential." The studio was silent again, but not out of shock this time. Out of awe. Then Rachel asked, "Last question. If the files do come out, if names are there, will this country actually care enough to change?" Jasmine paused, then looked directly into the camera. "That's not a question for me, Rachel. That's a question for them," she said, gesturing to the audience beyond the screen. "To every viewer who's ever said they want truth, this is your chance. What will you do when it hits your side of the aisle?" Boom. The line echoed like a closing argument in the trial of the century. Rachel sat back. Well, that's tonight's real headline. The clip of Jasmine's final line, "What will you do when it hits your side of the aisle?" was replayed on every major network by morning. Conservative pundits panicked. The RNC's media machine went into overdrive, issuing talking points and defensive tweets. But something had already shifted. The public didn't want sanitized responses. They wanted names. MSNBC's inbox flooded. Whistleblowers emerged. Staffers from the DOJ. Former Mar-a-Lago insiders. Even flight logs began circulating again, annotated this time, with connections made crystal clear. Jasmine, meanwhile, wasn't on defense. She was building momentum. She went live on Instagram that night, not from a polished set, but from her living room. "You all saw what they tried to hide. So now we push," she said. "No more hiding behind titles. No more shielding billionaires. No more pretending the justice system works the same for everyone." Her followers surged. Hashtags evolved, #Epstein files now, #Crockett demands truth. Then something unexpected happened. Rachel Maddow reposted Jasmine's monologue verbatim on her own Twitter account. With one caption. "She said what we were all too afraid to." The ripple became a wave. By midnight, members of Congress were being pressed for comment. Petitions gained millions of signatures. And Jasmine's voice was being dubbed the conscience of the Capitol on progressive podcasts. But Jasmine? She wasn't done. She pulled out a document folder on her desk. One with the DOJ seal and a redacted name on the front. "We're just getting started," she whispered into the camera. And the internet roared. The Capitol buzzed like a hornet's nest. By morning, Jasmine Crockett had a formal request filed, one that demanded a full, public release of the unredacted Epstein files. And it wasn't just symbolic. Her legal team had quietly uncovered a loophole, a clause buried in a 2009 Florida court settlement that could, if leveraged correctly, force a federal review. Jasmine had the receipts, and she wasn't afraid to use them. At a hastily scheduled press briefing, she stepped to the podium. Calm. Clear. No teleprompter. "I'm not here to speculate. I'm here to show you," she said, holding up a copy of the sealed affidavit. "This isn't about left or right. This is about kids. About justice. And about the people who think their bank accounts can bury the truth." A reporter from Fox News scoffed from the back row. "But Congresswoman, isn't this political theater?" Jasmine turned slowly. "Political theater is when people pretend to care. This," she held up the file again, "is what happens when someone actually does." The room fell silent. Minutes later, Rachel Maddow tweeted. "This is no longer a scandal. It's an earthquake." And it was. Within hours, DOJ phones were ringing off the hook. Pam Bondi's PR team went dark. A new special counsel was being quietly discussed behind closed doors. Jasmine's face was on every screen in America. And she hadn't even opened the last folder yet. The House floor was packed. Reporters leaned forward. Cameras flashed. And Jasmine Crockett, standing with one folder in her hand and the full weight of America's conscience behind her, didn't blink. "This document," she began, her voice steady, "contains names, dates, financial transfers, and, most importantly, officials who knew." A hush swept the chamber. "These aren't rumors. These aren't theories. These are government records. And what they show is complicity." Katie Couric, watching live on MSNBC, whispered under her breath, "My God." Jasmine flipped open the folder. The pages were heavily redacted, but key lines shined like sirens, references to Mar-a-Lago visitors, sealed settlements, and emails between Epstein's lawyers and GOP operatives, some still in office. She didn't name names, not yet. Instead, she looked directly at the C-SPAN camera. "If you're watching this and you're scared, you should be. If you're guilty, you should be shaking. And if you're innocent, help me open the rest." Twitter went nuclear. Hashtag Jasmine knows. Hashtag open it all. Hashtag names next. An emergency GOP meeting was called. But it was too late. The public had seen enough. Later that night, Jasmine walked out of the Capitol under heavy protection. Protesters weren't chanting her name, they were chanting her words. "Justice doesn't care about your zip code." And as she disappeared into the night, folder in hand, one thing was clear. She hadn't just spoken. She'd detonated the silence. And there it was. Jasmine Crockett didn't just drop evidence, she dropped the curtain. On the excuses. On the deflections. On the silence. In a town built on whispers and backroom deals, she dared to speak on the record. She didn't just hold the line, she drew a new one, and dared the powerful to cross it. Epstein was no longer a shadow. The files were no longer hidden. And the GOP? No longer quiet. Because Jasmine made sure the whole country heard what they never wanted you to know. She didn't need to shout. She didn't need to run. She just told the truth, live, loud, and unafraid. And after tonight, Washington will never be the same.